Storybeing, late night, early innovator. There is really no way of telling whether this is working. I have some ideas about how to test it though. And if you're seeing this, you're testing it with me. And you could leave a comment. Let's press some buttons and see what comes up. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm feeling a resistance to trying to speak really loudly. After I do this, I would like to go to sleep. Okay, here this is. So there will be feedback if I don't turn my mic off, but I can turn the mic off. So let's see. That is actually working. That is actually working. So this is like a camp out, right? I wonder if there's any way for there to be more light. I had a lamp, and then I no longer had a lamp. And now I have the blue lights from these different half-broken devices. Oh, and they hurt my eyes. And still, I seem to think that it's worth a try. We've had a really interesting day. A lot of things happened today. A lot of blessings have been unfolding. Isn't this my usual spiel, right? We're finding ourselves on the early edge of innovating at intersections that people who aren't experiencing the extremity of those intersections typically don't know how to process. Does it feel like I'm telling a ghost story? I think firelight would be better than the blue light. Definitely better than the LED. And yet, with all of the challenges of striving to communicate with people who don't quite grok what is going on at those extreme intersections, still, the people who don't understand what it is are understanding a little more and a little more all the time. It's not really possible to insulate oneself from it. The story we are all living together at first does seem to benefit from levels of dissociation, but then the dissociation becomes less and less viable. Bodies end up having to come to terms with what is actually happening in order to take any effective success-oriented action. We either come to a sense of reality about what we're experiencing, or we keep experiencing the compounding of the extreme intersections from which we're dissociating. from which we're attempting to dissociate. And the ramifications of living in these stories, which we don't have much of a choice, we're here in the story. That brings us so many blessings. The ramifications of being in the story is that we learn from the story, is that we are changed by the story, whatever part of the story we're in, even if we're doing our best to not be in this part of it, and to only stay over here in this part of it. This is a crazy way to live stream. Every aspect of what's occurring is crazier and crazier every moment. The world is shifting and dancing and reforming itself in more ways than we can possibly count. We've been taught to blame one another. We've been taught to castigate one another. And yet we only ever seem to really succeed in blaming and castigating ourselves. There really isn't any other to pin it on. We're all the same vast story being, all of us here together. Late night, early innovators. It's going to be really wacky to find out if any of this audio really worked. It sounded like it was working. Can I make a banner do a thing? StreamYard does kind of work pretty well on mobile in the web. I think it's really interesting. Everything is moving and changing for all of us, and we don't know what's going to happen next, but we have some intentions we've been setting. And one of them is to have a regular, ongoing, simulti-stream broadcast. I've been right up on the cusp of it. I kept almost being able to do it. And I tried some things in the past few weeks that I think have really made much more of a difference than I even realized could be possible. And I'm surfing it. And me doing this at 20 minutes to midnight. I want to be cute and say something like on a school night. I don't know what that means. Every night is a school night. This is a sign of where we're at and what's been expanding. And it's one of many, many really, really interesting things happening. Here's a banner. I'm really grateful for what we've been learning. I am amazed by the powers of the living body, the individual body, and the collective body. What we are able to do from the worst possible circumstances is amazing. It's so amazing. And we don't even know it's possible until suddenly we're doing it. There's something about the experience of being a living creature where we can suddenly find ourselves capable, capacious, where we had better be, or else. And we did not know the moment previous that we could possibly do it. And then we find ourselves doing it. And I think that is common to all of us. Not at all up to the point where that totally shifts and suddenly we have the power to do it, whatever it is. We are really lucky to be discovering it. It is an absolutely wild circumstance. We are all navigating a tremendous amount of chaos, even if we're managing to pretend most of the time that it's not chaos, it's well organized, it's not unpredictable, it's absolutely reliable. And I have never really re-anchored with what I want to say is the kind of normative world delusionality that used to feel to me like the only acceptable way of navigating. I thought I'd better think and feel this way or I'm going to get in trouble. And yes, guess what? When I stopped being able to think and feel that way, when I stopped being able to conform to others' expectations, I did. It did end up getting in trouble. um, and it turned out to be a kind of trouble that brought awareness into my world that I would not now want to be doing without. And so much of the work that we've been doing has been about how can we help connect more people with that kind of awareness, that kind of embodiment in the individual body and the collective body being embodied with one another as the interconnected living organism that we are all part of together. How can we be that without having to experience the most horrible, violent, ages long crisis? How can we lean towards one another and understand better what we're really encountering rather than having to be slammed through hell over and over and over and over and over again? Or maybe that's what some people need to happen. But I ask myself, did I need that to happen? I'm not sure I needed that to happen, but it did happen. And I mean, I don't know who would say some things I needed to happen, some terrible things I needed to happen, but all of those terrible things, no. But I, in my communities, we did not know how to tend the collective body. We didn't know how to be part of the collective body. We didn't retain enough of that knowledge. We hadn't learned enough about it by the time everything around us began to fall apart. So, how are we all going to choose together to learn what we can while we can so that we don't end up unnecessarily slammed? How can we be our most embodied story beings? How can we be those early innovators? how can we be ready for the next unanticipatable changes? We're having such a range of experiences. There are so many things that we can learn from one another when we choose to, when we practice focus, so that we even have the option to. We can recognize opportunities with one another. And the landscape, the spacescape, can suddenly be completely different. And we find ourselves with prodigious powers. And we can really care for one another and love ourselves and our communities so much more effectively when we come into those powers. It means a lot to me to even make the attempt. And I'm super grateful to those of you who are tuning in. What do you think? Can I sleep next?